So let's discuss Bootstrap's drop-down controls. So basically how these things work is you need a button with a data BS toggle drop-down and an item, in this case a unordered list, with a drop-down menu. And with that you can get the basic drop-down effect. In order to get the correct styling, we have a drop-down class that's grouping these things, and this is just to keep the sizing consistent together, and a drop-down toggle which creates this little toggle icon right here. For our screen readers, we have already expanded to tell that this is an expandable element, and we have our names linked by the ID and the labeled by attribute here. So this would pick up whatever name we set here. So we're using Angular for this one. We have an unordered list with a bunch of list items and a bunch of anchor tags that we have a clickable toggle element that's just going to toggle different bools first, second, and third. And this is going to turn these to active or nothing, which is going to denote inactive. So if we click this select and we hit first, you'll see that the first name is put in here. That's what I defined in the name category, and we'll show that in a second. And the first bool is turned on. As you can see, this is selected. So I turn that off by clicking it again. I'm basically swapping the values out. And I have all these other ones linked together, so that's just why they're doing that. As you see here, you can also substitute the LIA for a div and a button. Just remember that it's the menu and the drop down that really toggle everything. I'll just kind of show you what's going on here. If you take down the drop down class, we lose this kind of spacing here. So if we put that back in, oops. And let's say we wanted to, I'll show you what this does here. So if that'll just get out that little tick right there. And I'll undo that. And that's just showing you here, if we take out this drop down, these won't even select, while this one will select. So those are important. Same thing with the menu won't show up. Or if I take this out, it'll just auto expand. So there's the auto expansion. So that's kind of what all those things do. So let's go look at this class real quick. We'll show how it's working in a few places. So just with the toggle, I pass in a string. So going back to the HTML, I have the toggle class with a string, and in order to do a string literal inside of double quotes, you can only do in double quotes. You need that single tick to make it a string literal. So here we are. If the type equals first, then I toggle. Otherwise, I set to false. Basically, if it's second or third, this would always be false. Same thing for here. And if it actually equals that value, then I'll just swap them between true and false, back and forth. And then in the name, I just do a getter. So this is going to bind to this name on the button up here. And it's going to return first, second, or third, or select if nothing is set. So that's basically the structure there. I just swapped out the anchor tags to the buttons here. And here I showed kind of an Angular way of doing it. So I have a bool property. We have the drop-down toggle for that little icon. That's it. We have the area expanded just to kind of show you that it's expandable. And we took out the IDs, the drop-down toggle, the drop-down menu, because those weren't necessary. We just had to add the isDrop, and I put an ARIA label right here just because I took out the ID. But basically on the back here, we just have this isDrop, and I just toggle between them. On the front end, isDrop equals not isDrop. And it does the same thing as all these other ones. So down here, just to show you kind of without Angular, now we could let's make this span the whole length. You have this drop-down link, so we're always going to have the same name. Expand this out to call 12.2. So basically we kind of have the same deal, but we're not storing the data of what's going on. So you click on action. Normally, maybe you would click off on a link or jump you to another page. That's kind of the assumption going on here. But basically, you would not be able to store the value and save it for later. In this case, you could store a couple values. Maybe you have a couple of multi-selections, and when you save it, you pass those values to a model, or the model is backing this data to begin with. So that's kind of how you'd use it to store and persist data. We also have this drop right command. So if you want to drop right Then you have this drop-in class, use button group instead of drop-down, and then use a drop-in, and that pushes everything out to the right. And kind of the same thing here, everything else is exactly the same with the drop menu, and you've got the toggle drop type with these classes. So that's a different style we can use, and we can combine that with Angular to get the similar kind of effects, kind of store what was the last value set. Or if we wanted to, we could do multi-select, because if you're Angular here and you're like toggle the first on, you could just do the first and turn it on and off, and the second turn it on and off, and the third turn it on and off. So you could add multiple values all at once if that was your desire. So I hope going through this, you guys understand dropdowns, kind of what they're doing. You know, if you want to change anything, you know what to do, and you can kind of manipulate this better with Angular. So thanks.